would like to show you all one thing on D2L before we get started here. On the news feed, move this off over here. On the news feed, a number of you have asked for an example of what a good, well-written article review would look like, so I've posted an example here. This was actually in another class, it was written for another class, where they reviewed chapters from a book, but it gives you an idea of what kind of arguments look like. And then if you'll compare that with the rubric and follow the rubric, you should get a really good grade on that. So if you want an example of that, I'm providing this for you. I will tell you the one thing that you probably need to do that this leaves off, because it was a series of these that they did in that class, is it doesn't have a really good conclusion. So you might want to look at that. It doesn't have a really complete conclusion. But other than that, the arguments made through it are really a good example. And so I think that might be helpful for some of you to look at. Does anybody have any questions about the article review or the group project? There was a question about the group project that somebody emailed me, and I think I responded to that. But if you all have questions, I would like to address those before we get down the road. Yes. What I'm going to do, I think, is I'm trying to figure it out, and I've got enough time to figure out how to do it in D2L with a rubric. It's not exactly the most user-friendly on the instructor side to use D2L, but I think I'm going to put it in a rubric, because what happened to me last semester was I got everybody's grades recorded, everybody turned in hard copies of it, and that's how I normally did it. That way I knew it was turned in class. And I was coming to class one morning to turn them all back to my students, and I opened the door to my pickup truck, and a huge gust of wind caught it, and I was chasing these article reviews across the parking lot of Thatcher Hall, and so I want to make sure that I don't have that happen again. So it was very entertaining, I'm sure, for everybody to watch, as I was out there running around like a chicken with its head cut off, trying to staple their, nail down these article reviews as they were flying across the page. So, across the pavement. So what we're going to do today is we're going to finish talking about justice, and I gave you all, since the video recorder went out last time, I gave you some extra time to come up with some really good answers. And what I'd like you to do is have each of your representatives come down front, and I'm going to write on the board sort of the few buzzwords that come out of the definitions, and we're going to see if we can see some emerging trends in your definitions of ethics, right, or justice, which was the question. So if everybody's group representative will come down, again, just to try and help maybe get you all used to speaking in public and watch yourself a bit on the camera. So we should have, what, 17 groups, is that right? And I will write on the board some of the themes that seem to be emerging from your questions. So you have 2 questions, right? What were the questions? And what's the other one? How does it apply to marketing? Right, that's a great question. So we've only got 3 groups up here, so let's start over there. You guys want to line up over here? And we'll start from left to right.
It's just on groupies, so if you want to
Do some of the groups not have representatives? We're refreshing your memory. Okay. It's been a while. You slept since last Thursday. Okay, let's have some scoot down so we can all get on the camera. All of these around. Look excited. Okay, let's have 4 of you kind of stand over here on the side, 3, 4, so I can get everybody in. I want everybody to have 15 minutes of fame and glory. All right.
Okay, all right.
you come over here?
Near him.
Yeah, Brad. Try to make sure that we're all in. I want you to stand right here. I need you to come over here. Get you all in. And I've got you in the orange. Okay, let's start with your definition of justice. Go ahead.
You want me to start? Okay.
Yeah, I want you
All
to
right.
start.
So we have, for what is justice, we said just a basic definition, giving just punishment to fit a crime. But then we kind of built off that and said morality plays into it. So different people's morals give a different view on what justice really is. So some people's view on justice is going to be different than someone else's.
Okay.
So, if I think that someone should receive the death penalty, then that my view could be different than somebody else's because they may not believe in the death penalty. And as far as marketing goes, justice and marketing is kind of like, we were talking about, if like the Nationwide person in the Super Bowl, they were showing the kid died. I would do this when I'm dead. It's not necessarily the best way to market your product. And during the Super Bowl, everybody was doing happy things, and they were doing a sad commercial. So just in terms of what they were doing was different than everybody else. It's kind of something along those lines.
Okay, I like that you came up with a substantive example. That's really good. From something, the biggest day in advertising was the Super Bowl, right? How many of you watched the game? Almost everybody. It was actually a really good game this year, didn't you think? I was amazed. I normally don't like NFL football because I think it's really scripted. I think college football is far more risky. They take bigger risks. But I thought it was a good game, so I like that you used a current example. All right, let's see. What do you all have?
We kind of had a lot of the same ideas. Their definition was fitting punishment for the crime.
Okay, so we've got a check there. We'll put another check. All right, good.
But again, it also brought up the fact that there are different ideas of what that punishment could be.
Okay, so we'll put a check there. We got two of that. Okay, visual. All right. And what did you come up with for why is it relate to marketing?
Don't actually remember.
You don't actually remember?
We got as far as this part, and then some of us on here. So.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, we came up with a previous definition.
Okay, go ahead.
Justice is the distribution of risks and benefits.
Okay. So you have like an analysis of cost and benefit, basically. So we can say cost, benefit, okay. And why is it important to marketing? Didn't get that far. Okay, all right.
For justice, we put equal opportunities among individuals with respect to moral and ethical social norms. But it is objective based on where you're from, like your cultural and social differences.
All right, we'll talk a little bit about that. I think that's good. Equal opportunity. Now, with regard to equal opportunity, how are we going to determine equal opportunity?
It's based on what's there, I guess, from where you're from. I guess the overall majority of what's considered.
All right. And how's it relate to marketing?
You didn't get that one.
Okay. We all had a whole weekend. We've been emailing back and forth here on this. All right.
So for our justice, we pretty much just have fairness and equality between,
Okay, we got 2 votes for that. All right.
and whenever it goes to marketing, I believe that even though I just say as them, but everyone just needs to have, they all have the same opportunity, but they need to be treated. I just want to really know where to go with it.
Okay, so you've got equality of opportunity. You've got equality of results. I'm not sure I like that. Should I give equality of results would be if I said everybody in here gets an F. I've treated you all equally. What? No takers on that? Everybody gets an A?
Yeah.
I don't think, yeah, okay. All right, we might have a problem. Okay. And we have another vote for fair, honesty, morality. So we've got actually 2 votes for that there. Okay.
We applied to the marketing or the consumer is
some kind of social responsibility as far as. Okay, good.
The company has good customer service, program for purchasing their products, because they know that if something goes wrong with them, they can figure out how to do it. And it doesn't have good customer service in the product.
Okay, all right.
And then,
Very good.
we also said that it can be effective in society today through social media.
Oh, all right, very good. So you have this word of mouth.
Yeah.
We'll talk a lot about that when we get to integrated marketing communication. Word of mouth, that's important. All right, very good.
Okay. Definition of justice, we had to uphold a set of ethical standards to keep individuals accountable for what is morally just.
I love that. Standard. Yeah, I like that.
And then marketing,
Yep.
easier to market something that applies to having justice than to market something that isn't.
Okay. It's easier to market. You think you do better if you market something that's fair, safe, and you might get better results than if you market products that are harmful and kill people. What about cigarettes? They've been very successful at marketing cigarettes that kill people, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure they're ethical.
I think we're more going for, we used the AT&T or the Verizon one, because you said it has so much more than everybody else,
Okay.
but how do we really know? Does that make sense?
Right. How do you verify
Yeah.
that claim?
Yeah.
And we see that is one of the big issues that we see, particularly with advertising, is verification. So for example, they say Tylenol, the most trusted pain reliever used by hospitals. How do they get that? Well, they give the Tylenol to the hospitals, right? So they get it for free. So that's maybe, what is the substance behind the claim as well? How do they come up with that figure? All right, that's good.
We kind of came up with justice always means do the fair thing, always do the right thing. And
Fair.
justice doesn't always mean equality.
Doesn't always be. Okay, not.
We kind of came up with an example, like two men need surgery to save their lives. One man needs $8 million for his surgery, the other man needs $2 million. People get together as a fundraiser, they raise $10 million. Equality would say $5 million for both of those men, but only one man is saved. So we think justice would be giving the $8 million and the $2 million. That is the most fair.
Okay, so it's not necessarily, particularly in a capitalist society, we can't give everybody actually exactly the same results, right? So we can't, but maybe we give them equality before the law or equal opportunity. They can both go out and fundraise
Exactly.
and try to get the money. We do have this problem with scarce resources in marketing. How do we distribute them, right? In a capitalist society, we have a tendency to say by money value, but it's not always, right? With your example, that's a really interesting one because for things like heart transplants and things like that, one of the things that they'll take into account when you're on a list for a transplant is, whether or not you are likely to survive compared to maybe somebody that's younger. And so you might not get, the heart lung transplant or whatever it is that you need if somebody else is a better candidate or better able to survive and live a long and productive life. If you're 80, they're not going to do a whole lot of this, right? You might need it, it might be good for you, but we're not going to take it away from a 20-year-old. So, okay, all right.
Again, justice is based on moral code, ethics, equality, and fairness.
Another one, okay, fairness. Another one.
And force or render a fair verdict, vindicate, like you right or wrong.
Okay, equality, so proportionality maybe? Okay.
And marketing companies will promote or say almost anything to convince consumers to buy their product.
Okay, and that's not necessarily a good thing, or is it a good thing? Okay, it depends on what they say. Is the lie good or is it bad? When the doctor tells you this shot isn't gonna hurt at all. Good lie? Yeah. The terrible lie, right? Every kid knows that the shot is gonna hurt. Okay. Yeah, right. Okay.
Definition of fairness and equality.
And we got another one for equality.
Applies to marketing and fairness. Consumers will most likely choose to buy products from a company that is ethically sound and buying from another company, even if the product might be cheaper. We do think that there is a tipping point that sways the consumers to buy the cheaper products than the products they're looking for to purchase or
Okay, all right, that's a good, good application of marketing. I think you did a good job there. Okay, what did you guys come up with?
Human essence are the achievement of human fruition or ordinary
Okay, human what? How about human fulfillment? Is that okay? Okay, human fulfillment for all members? Okay. Okay.
Like when the government sets on policies, it should not use or across the of minus in the average.
Okay. Okay, so equality, maybe in terms of starting. Okay, very good.
We put a fair judgment and/or treatment of individuals based on groups' morals, values, and ethics.
So we've got this idea of society again, so we've got another one for society. We'll talk a little bit about that. All right.
And for the marketing part, we put the more fair and just the company treats its customers, the more likely the customers are to return to that company.
Okay, so you've got good results for the company. That's good. All right, I think we hope that's true, right? The companies that like Johnson & Johnson, we looked at them and they do better than companies like Philip Morris maybe that say they see nothing wrong with, selling people stuff they don't need.
We said that justice was presenting what's right, honest, and considering the moral values. And as far as marketing goes, you have to be honest with your marketing to your customers.
Honesty. All right, I think that's good.
For justice, we had what you get is what you deserve.
Okay, desserts.
And then for marketing, just be honest with your customer. Figure it out.
Okay, all right.
Okay, you said what is justice, a moral balance between actions and reactions according to society.
Okay, we've got society, we're gonna have that. Society, we got another vote for society. Here's one, yeah, that's society, okay, by the society, all right.
Okay, we linked it to marketing, present, and majority of opinions in society or consumers will decide if your product or service is worth purchasing based on their morals and their values, affecting the way you market your product or service.
Okay, all right, so again, you've got this idea that good results happen for marketers that are ethical. And I think to some extent we see that. People want to do business with ethically sensitive companies and they take it out on companies that they perceive as not being necessarily ethically sensitive. For example, Nike years and years ago got into a lot of trouble and changed their practices in terms of what they were doing in sourcing goods in the supply chain and using child labor, and a bunch of other companies have done the same thing. All right.
We put on as what any reasonable person believes better process related to marketing as ethical advertising. In other words, don't advertise false advertising. It's not. It also leads to privacy of others. You're on the internet. You're looking at someone else. Someone else is coming up. That's what you want to see is advertising. You're looking at Mercedes.
All right, I like this idea that you have the reasonable person. This is one that the lawyers talk a lot about. I'm a lawyer, so I like it. This reasonable person standard in law, we use it all the time. And we say this is an objective standard, right? Because we're going to judge your behavior based on what we perceive as this objectively reasonable person. Would the reasonable business, for example, behave the way you did? When they hurt somebody, if somebody gets hurt as a result of product liability, what a reasonable person is brought this product to market. It's like that. There's another theory out there called strict products liability, which we'll touch on at some point. But you know, these are reasonable points, so I like that idea that you come up with this kind of reasonable concept. And let's see, just a little bit so the camera can get you. You don't want to move in. You should smile.
A situation of like where that last year, objectively, they lives and trying to consider the facts of the situation, and come up with the consequences being fair by the populace. Fair. So just, you know, punishment for whoever did the wrong, that, you know, like we all know whoever should be out of the class, and we all agreed on that, as a majority, that's
Here's a bit of a kind of a society, whatever society chooses, correct?
And then, what we decided to apply to the class was just because, your definition of justice, could easily come when people see you as, you know, so if you make an eye for an eye, that's what you are. And the reason we said that was because like when a company makes a mission statement, when someone, that's what that company stands for, that's what they believe in, that's why it's such a big deal, that you make a good, sound mission statement that really embodies what you believe as a company, because it says to the whole, you know, to everyone, to all the consumers, that this is what we stand for, this is what we're about. And if that is something that most people, most consumers don't, you know, being just or fair, or, you know, then that, you know, that's what people think of you in jail by your product. That's just, especially considering, you know, the economy we're in and the way people purchase things. It's like, you know, if you're not able to make donations as much money to, you know, those who are less fortunate, then like, people won't buy the stuff. Like, we decide who's the most popular company, who makes the most money, you know, so on and so forth. Like, Nike would do Nike without all of us buying Nike, you know. And so if Nike wasn't there, they didn't have a good mission statement, they didn't donate to those less fortunate and so on, then there would be no Nike because most people wouldn't buy it. Nike doesn't care about this all the time.
Okay, so how did you relate that to the Super Bowl since we all watched the ad? What did you all think of the McDonald's Super Bowl ad? You think that's going to increase people wanting to go to McDonald's? You think so? So they've decided that in the month of February, what's their deal? Show the love between now and Valentine's Day, February 14th, right? Show the love, and that's how you can pay at McDonald's. They'll choose randomly selected people. Do you think that's gonna increase their value? Does that make you feel better about McDonald's? Not really. They have the huge percentage of the market share in that market of fast food. Okay, you all did some really good stuff here. I'll let you guys go back to your seats. We got a lot of really interesting ideas here, and so we need to talk about these ideas. We see, I think when you look at these things, we see trends emerge out of what you all come up with. Obviously, justice and ethics are enormously important to marketing, because marketing, and I think a lot of you got at this in your responses, is something that touches everybody's lives, and we have a potential as marketers to really impact society in both good ways and bad ways. And I think a lot of you got that. This idea that if you market products that are harmful or that are less than ethical, the customer may not reward you with their patronage. And we have seen that in terms of corporate social responsibility. The companies have suffered when they have been perceived as less than ethically sensitive. So one of the things, for example, that Walmart did years ago was they started this campaign to make themselves appear to be more a part of the community, right? And so they did this My Walmart and My Neighborhood Market and stuff like that in their advertising, because Walmart was perceived as being what? It was perceived as being sort of maybe a necessary evil that we didn't like. They went into small towns and they destroyed local businesses and things like that. And so Walmart did this whole campaign about giving back and all the things that they do and all the ways that they bring value to you in your lives, right? And so I think that we can see that. There are some ideas here that we need to think about, because there are some challenges to ethics that we need to consider, and they're not necessarily valid ethical theories, and I'll tell you why they're not valid ethical theories, and this is a test question you might want to write down. They are important because they challenge our perceptions of ethics, and they seem, at least two of them, to be intuitively correct And some of you picked up on some of these things in this idea. For example, one of you said that it was an individual's view of morality. And we'll talk just a minute about subjectivism and why that's so attractive. But these challenges to ethics can't be considered valid ethical theories because, one, they are not based on rational analysis of alternatives or reasoned thought. So this is the first thing that makes them not ethical. Two, because they're not based on rational analysis, they allow for exceptionalism. They allow you to say, I'm special. I'm beyond the rules somehow. And three, because they allow for exceptionalism, we can't universalize them. We can't make them applicable to all places and all times. Now, in contrast to this, we'll look at some valid ethical theories and their application to marketing. And it's not that these valid ethical theories don't have problems. They do. Each one presents some limitations, and you should think about that. But they are valid because they allow for reason. They're predicated on reason. They don't admit exceptions to the rules. And therefore, we can develop universal principles or guidelines from them. Right? So the first of these challenges, where's the roll sheet? Is it still going around? Be sure and sign the roll sheet. I was going to use it to call on people, but I guess I'll wait until it gets down here to the front. The first of these challenges is something called subjectivism. Now, subjectivism says that morality is individually based. It's up to the individual. This seems intuitively, and some of you picked up on this, individual views, this seems intuitively appealing because if I ask really hard questions like what is justice, we come up with lots of different answers. Look at how many different words we came up with, and I only wrote down some of the major ones from your things, from your ideas, right? We've got punishment, crime here. What may be limiting about viewing justice just in terms of punishment and crime? Yeah, do we want to criminalize everything that we see as being unjust? If, for example, I asked you all if we had equality of results, if I gave everybody in here an F, that's equality of results, right? I've treated everybody in here exactly equally. Right? You all wouldn't like that, would you? Would you say it's unjust? Some of you are just sitting here. You should all be shaking your head. Yes, we would say it's unjust. Let's try it and see what happens. No? Do we want to criminalize that? Do we want to send me to jail if I give you an F? Maybe? You're up for that? Well, you know, I mean, is giving somebody an F really on the same par as somebody who commits murder? Right? We've got scarce resources out there. Do we want to lock up every professor who's unjust and give somebody an F? I will tell you that, you know, there have been professors that have been unjust, you know, and have given people Fs unjustly, right? And it's just going to happen out there. In the aggregate of things, that's a probability that's going to happen at some point in time, right? And we have a process to appeal that. It's called the Great Appeal that you can file, right? And so, but I don't think we want to lock professors up for that. When we have to think about, you know, are we going to lock up somebody who's stolen your car or the professor who gave you an F? Both things hurt you, but I don't think we want to criminalize one of them, do we? I think the stealing the car we want to criminalize, and we say that, but we don't necessarily want to criminalize the professor, right? So we've got all of these different ideas, and so subjectivism seems intuitively appealing because it does seem that it's what I feel. It's my emotion, right? It's predicated on a philosophical concept called solipsism. And solipsism says the self is all one can know. You can't truly know what it is to be another human being. Can you? Can you really put yourself in somebody else? Can you really imagine being somebody else? Yeah, it's really hard. A lot of times I tell students, because I obviously have done a lot of class and I've sat through a lot of lectures and a lot of schooling, that I have a lot of empathy for you, but I may not have a lot of sympathy for you. Because I know what you've been through. I've taken a lot of tests, right? I've turned in a lot of papers. But do I really know what it's like to be you? When you come to me and you say, I'm sorry I was late on my paper, right? You know, I had all these things. Can I really empathize with you? I don't know. You have all of this other stuff in your experience that maybe I can't relate to, right? I can relate to turning in a paper, but can I relate to, I have kids, and I'm a working mom. I can't relate to that. I've never had children, right? I'm not a working mom. I'm not a working parent. So can you ever really relate to it? The psychological equivalent of solipsism is called narcissism, right? Narcissism is the belief that I'm special. It goes back to the myth of a youth named Narcissus who looks at his reflection and falls in love with it, right? Extreme narcissistic personality disorder. Now, what can we say about subjectivism? Well, if we accepted subjectivism as true, that there are no, and subjectivism says there are no a priori truths. A priori is knowledge that we can gain from the rational mind. There are none of these, as opposed to a posteriori, which is knowledge that is gained based on experience. And subjectivists deny that we can come up with this kind of knowledge. What is this kind of knowledge? If I have a rectilinear triangle, that's a right angle triangle, and I know that this side is 3 and this side is 4, say inches, what does the third side have to be? 25? 5, right? How did Pythagoras come up with this theorem? No. You can see it with the mind's eye, right? He didn't go around measuring rectilinear triangles. I know you didn't think this was a math class, right? He didn't go around measuring, and it's nice if you have a 3, 4, 5 triangle, right? It becomes more tricky if the numbers are different. You can see this in the mind's eye, and subjectivists say there's nothing with regard to universal moral truths that are like this, that are this objective and concrete. It's all based on experience. It's all a posteriori knowledge, right? Well, if we accepted this claim as true, what could we not do as a society? We could never make universal rules for people if we accepted this as true, right? We could never say, if we just said it's all up to the, and there's no objective truths, there are no a priori truths like this with regard to ethics, we could never make rules as a society as a whole. And I think we can. What kinds of things can we say that you don't have to experience, for example, to know that you don't want to have it happen to you? You don't want to be murdered, right? I don't like students that fall asleep in my class. So I take out my 357 Magnum and Justice is Fast, and I smoke you for falling asleep in my class. Yeah. You don't need to die to know that you don't want to die, right? I mean, we can all, there are very few people that want to die. You don't have to, so I think we can know that a priori, can't we? people don't want to die. You know? I don't think people want to die in any culture.
Yeah, but you don't know that. I mean, like, we can make rules, we can make rules. I think the government has a whole bunch of rules. We can make them, and the society can even fairly decide what they are, but that is still based on experience.
I don't think so. I don't think you need to experience death to know that you don't want it.
You have to know what it is, you have to experience someone else's.
I don't think you experience, you don't truly experience, you cannot experience somebody else's death, right? I think it's one of our most fundamental, the survival instinct is one of maybe our most fundamental drives.
That's why it's so scary.
Yeah. Now, there are people that kill themselves, right? But they're very few. You know, they're definitely the exception, right? So subjectivism, you can't come up with rules for society. The second challenge to ethics that we need to talk about, and this one is the one that marketers like a lot, and it's the one that's hard to deal with, and companies like it a lot, because it seems, again, intuitively appealing, and it's called cultural relativism. Now, what cultural relativists say is that we can't accept the individual as the moral guide. We have to look to society. So it's not that we have a priori truths, but rather these are based not in the individual, but in the society itself. And this seems, again, intuitively appealing because we see a wide variety of cultures out there, right? We see a lot of differences in various societies. Even among Western societies, we see differences, don't we? What is one of the things, as marketers, we allow in the United States that they don't allow in most of the other countries of the world? Direct-to-consumer advertising of pharmaceuticals. In the U.S., we allow the direct-to-consumer advertising, we'll talk a lot about this when we talk about integrated marketing communication, advertising of pharma, big pharma, to individuals. The only other country that allows that, the only other Western nation that allows that is New Zealand. All the others say we don't allow that. It's not good for people to be out there self-prescribing drugs, right? Basically going to their doctor and demanding drugs. They don't have the knowledge. In the United States, we generally say freedom of choice and individual knowledge is a good thing, and so we allow you to advertise all these drugs, right? So there are all of these drugs for things that I don't even want to think about. For every kind of condition that you can possibly imagine, and they put them on the television. And I'm not sure, I really need to know about that.
Well, other than that,
Now, this is, again, a problem because if we accept this as true, one of the things that we're not going to be able to do is we're not going to be able to say things like, oh, Nazi Germany was wrong. And I think we can say that. I think we can find, this cultural relativists say there are no universal truths that we can find. And there are at least 3 universal truths that we can find among all societies, at all places, in all times, right? So they are, and you should know this from the exam, a prohibition against killing members of the in-group. No society could sustain itself that allowed for the indiscriminate killing of members of the society itself. Now, plenty of societies throughout history have allowed you to do what? Kill members of the out-group, right? Indiscriminately. You can kill those people over there. You just can't kill our people. You can kill that tribe over there, don't kill us. Now, as we've gotten more advanced, we've extended that prohibition to even members of the out-group, right? Do we have any Canadians in here? Maybe like South Park, right? They don't treat Canadians with the best respect in South Park, do they? But, as a society, we don't, when the Canadians come running across the border, we don't shoot them, right? We don't do that. So we've gotten a little bit more advanced. The second prohibition that you can find amongst all societies and all places at all times is a prohibition against bearing false witness against members of the in-group. Again, you can lie about members of the out-group, but you can't lie about members of the in-group. And finally, the third prohibition is is a prohibition. Now, some societies are communal, so you have to think this in that sense, but they do have communal type living arrangements. You cannot steal from members of the in-group. Now, they may share a lot of stuff, but you can't go over and if somebody's using it, just rip it out of their hands. Right? Now, we've extended these to others. Now, the third challenge in ethics, and the one that is not the one that sounds right, in fact, it doesn't sound right at all, is maybe the most difficult to deal with, and it's called psychological egoism. And this one particularly is important when we think about marketing ethics and something called affluenza, which moral philosophers say what marketers have done. What we think we do as marketers is we think we satisfy needs and wants of individuals in the marketplace. And what some moral philosophers say is that we're not actually satisfying needs and wants, we are creating needs and desires that are wholly irrational. Through our marketing and through our advertising. We are creating needs and wants, and people can't help but want this stuff. And it goes along with this idea of psychological egoism. The idea of psychological egoism is that either as a result of nature, nurture, or a combination of the two, we cannot help but respond to stimuli the way in which we respond. We are programmed to respond. You think that you have free will, but free will may be illusory. Is the roll sheet made it all the way around? We have it. Right here. All right, so let's try an experiment. I'm going to horribly offend the people in biology with my experiment because I'm going to strip down genetics to a very simplistic form, right? What makes men genetically different from women? A Y chromosome, right? It's this Y chromosome. That's what makes a man, genetically. So I want everyone who has a Y chromosome to hold your hand up. If you have a Y chromosome, I want you to hold your hand up. Hold them up high. Let's see. How many of them? Okay, you can put them down now. Now, you thought you had free will, but I got every man in this audience to raise their hand. Why? I'll tell you why. Because you're socially programmed to do what the authority figure at the front of the room says to do for something, right? You're told when teacher tells you to do something, you do something. Or, if you didn't hold your hand up, the student to your right or left might look at you. Not sure? Are you questioning? Right? So you held your hand up. You didn't have free will. Did you? I don't know. This one's hard to deal with. We think we have free will. Psychological egoists would say you don't have free will. Let's think about this. Let me find somebody that I can ask a really easy question that's here. Ms. Landers, you're on the front row. I've had you before. Well, actually, you haven't had my class before. You did a research project with me. What do you like? Photography. Could you will yourself to not like photography? Oh, you're too easy. Lots of students say, yeah, I can will myself to not.
I could will myself not to do it. I could sell my camera and not do any photography and not look at pictures of anybody else.
But why would you do that?
Okay, you challenged me, but.
Okay, because then you would want to show me that you could do it. But a psychological egoist would say, you didn't want that either. You didn't will yourself to want that either. You simply responded. You wanted to show me something more than you wanted to participate in photography, but you didn't choose that of your own free will either, right? Well, what can we say about psychological egoism? It engages in a logical fallacy called equivocation, in that it says people always do these things because they always act in a certain way. And it equates or equivocates on the reason that people do things with the feelings that follow from them. And it's not necessarily the same thing. But if you really start to think about it, it is really hard. Could you will yourself to not want something? Can you will yourself to not want the chocolate cake? Well, I don't think you can, maybe. What you can do is you can say, I'm not going to have the chocolate cake, but of course you want something else more, maybe your health, right? But it's very difficult to think about. This one just doesn't seem intuitively appealing, but it is perhaps the most difficult challenge to overcome. Because if people really can't help themselves, it would be unfair then to punish them for things or to say that they're not a moral actor for things that they cannot necessarily control, right? They do, and there have been challenges to this. For example, there are some males that have an extra Y chromosome, and they have actually challenged in court the idea that maybe they couldn't help but commit violent crimes. It's not been widely accepted in the law, but there have been challenges, yeah.
Psychologically, even if it's true, you take that as true, that is there morality at all? Because everybody's just doing what they do.
They would say no, but they would say there is a solution to that. Hobbes, for example, would say that what we do is we get people to recognize that they're better off giving up some things. So, but it's not that they choose that, it's just that you get them to recognize this. It's called ethical egoism. And so you form a social contract, and through contractual law, you get them to behave in ways that actually ultimately benefit themselves and the greater good, right? By respecting the rules of law and things like that. That would be the Hobbesian choice. So what are some modern theories that are, if we dispense with these ethical challenges because they're not based on reason, they allow for exceptionalism, therefore they're not universal. So what are some of the things that we can say are valid ethical theory, right? Well, the one that most students like the most, at least business students like the most, is something called utilitarianism. The theory of utility. And the reason that business students like this one the most is because it most closely represents our economic system. And capitalistic economics is largely predicated on the theory of utility, right? Which is what? What is the theory of utility? You have $5 in your wallet. What do you want to get for that $5?
The most good for the most amount of people.
What?
The most good for the most amount of people.
Oh, you're a philanthropist. You want to share your $5.
I want $20.
You want $20. Okay, so we're going to break your $5 bill up to 116 different parts. You really want to do that? No, you don't want to do that. Huh? Oh, okay, so you want to get the most stuff that you can get for the least amount of money, right? So you want to stretch that $5 as far as it will go to buy the stuff that you really want, right? So you want to get the most bang for your buck. Well, in ethical terms, what utilitarians would say is it's not money, it's happiness. We want to make the most number of people happy that we possibly can. And that's good. Now, the reason that students like this is because it is the way we tend to judge, right? We do a cost-benefit analysis, particularly as business people. We do this cost-benefit analysis. If I bring a product to market and I advertise it and I get people to buy it and it satisfies their needs, have we created the most happiness in theory? Well, I've satisfied a need that they want. They're happy. They've given me money in exchange for that good or service, right? And I'm happy. And haven't we increased overall happiness? Yay! Whee! Fun! Right? Isn't this wonderful? What if the product? Well, all products break at some point, right? If you've all heard the age-old adage that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense until you really think about it. You can't have your cake and eat it too, right? Why is that true? If you've eaten the cake, you don't have it, right? So you can't have it, your hand and eat it too and still have it. But you've gotten happy, right? You've eaten the cake and you're full and you're satisfied. Isn't that great? Okay. Any problems with this? What? Doesn't always hold true. Why wouldn't you want to be happy? You might want more. Okay, well, I mean, the answer to this is that the fact that you want more doesn't necessarily lead to the overall. It's not just my happiness I have to worry about, right? It's everyone's happiness, or in the absence of happiness, the least amount of pain. That sounds okay, doesn't it? Least amount of pain. The least amount could be a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it could be the least amount possible, and it might still be.
Yeah, there's going to be lots of suffering, right? That's why I tell my parents that they still need to give me money, because I didn't ask to be brought into this vale of tears that we call life, you know. So I need you to pay for stuff for me. It works sometimes, you know. How many of you all do that? But I didn't ask for this, right? You do. Works, doesn't it? And then I'm happy. And they're happy because I'm happy. And we're all happy. Well, maybe there's a problem with this. Now, again, what this does is it allows us to be absolutely rational, because we're going to have to increase the overall happiness for everybody, right? So it allows, we can't say it's my happiness or my group's happiness. It's overall happiness, right? For everybody. So it is rational, because we can do a cost-benefit analysis. We can base rules, we can make rules based on these cost-benefit analysis, and then we can apply it universally. But there are some things that maybe it's a problem. It is a valid ethical theory because of these three things, but there are some problems. Let's think about this. We're on the Titanic. We know how this is going to end, right? Poorly for us, isn't it? Because you all have seen the movie with the skinny little kid, right? Who's actually apparently, according to his girlfriend, not so skinny anymore. She's told Leonardo he needs to lose weight. Is the latest TMZ or whatever it is that reports on these things has said that she's told him, but at the time he made Titanic, he was a skinny little kid, right? It's going to end poorly. There's an exhibit in Branson, Missouri. They built this ship that looks like the Titanic, and you can go and view artifacts from the Titanic. It actually looks like this ship that they built. How many of you have been there? One, two. It's a really neat exhibit, right? And what's your ticket to get into the event? It's a name. It's a boarding pass card, right? And it gives you a name and it tells you where you are. You're either a first, second, or third class passenger, right? And then at the end of the exhibit, what can you do? Yeah, you can find out whether or not I've done this 3 times. I've taken 3 different people. I've always lived. It's been good for me. I've always been a first class passenger in this, so it's been great. They see me coming and they say, that guy with the bow tie right there, give him the first class ticket. So, it turns out that it's good for us. We're on the lifeboats, but we're taking on water. We look down at the life raft and it says maximum occupancy 4 people. Well, there's me, there's you, there's Mother Teresa, there's George W. Bush, and a castaway named Bob. What are we going to do?
Eat Bob.
Okay. No, you can't get rid of Bush, right? He's the leader, or was the leader of the free world. He's an important man. You can't do that. So, okay, well, she has much less life to live. Mother Teresa's old, and of course she says, "I'll take one for the team," right? Well, I don't know. You know, it's Mother Teresa.
But all the
This,
customers
this,
are huge.
this woman is a saint. You're going to need these people someday. So naturally, you turn to me and say, you're a lawyer. Right? We've all heard the lawyer jokes. What do you call 1,000 lawyers at the bottom of the ocean? A good start. Right? Well, no, you can't get rid of me. I mean, you know, I come down here, I provide knowledge to you all, so that, you know, certainly my life has meaning. You all, I have lots of meaning to my life. Let's push Bob over. Do you see what we're doing? We're doing the calculus with the human life. And it's really kind of creepy. Isn't it? It's really, really kind of creepy to do that. And there are just some things that we say that maybe we don't want to do. There's an attempt to fix this problem, right? Because you could end up with maybe an act that produces the overall greatest happiness, but in the aggregate doesn't. So the purest form of utilitarianism is what we might call act utilitarianism. And it says that in each action we have to think about what we're going to do and take the action that's going to produce the greatest overall happiness. There are problems with this because we might start to say things like, don't do a calculus on a human life. And so a second version of this might be called rule utilitarianism. And what rule utilitarianism says is we need to attempt to develop rules that in the specific instance might not make the most happiness, but by and large, on the whole, over the course of time will produce the greatest amount of happiness. Things like we don't throw people overboard, right? We don't market products that might make us all happy in the short term, but miserable in the long term. Like cigarettes, although we do allow people to use this idea of autonomy to choose that. But we don't allow, for example, the marketing of opium and cocaine. Well, you know, Colorado's pushing the door open, maybe, right? We don't allow for that. Even though that might produce a lot of happiness, we're not going to do that. Because by and large, on the whole, you know, down the road, having a society full of addicted people would be bad for us, right? So we'll come up with rules that say things like this. You don't kill the serial killer indiscriminately. How many of you have seen a movie called Judge Dredd? It's an old movie now. I think they're remaking it, aren't they? What's it about? They did remake it. Okay, I didn't realize they made a remake. What's it about? An executioner, right? Yeah, the police force in the future are judge, jury, and execution. And people actually fear the police as a result, right? So we don't let the police indiscriminately kill people, even though it might produce efficient results, right? If we know that somebody's a serial killer, wouldn't it be more efficient to allow the police officer to just shoot him? Well, we don't do that. We still have this idea of a trial and justice and all of these, even though that's not efficient necessarily, because people might start to fear the police. So rule utilitarianism comes in. I'm starting to lose my voice and I have another class because I've got allergy problems. So I'm going to let you go a little bit early. You can use this time to work in your groups on your group projects. If you have questions, and I'll answer those if you have questions for me. And we'll pick up with this on Tuesday. We'll talk about